Hello all and welcome back to A Little Bit of SaaS. This episode features Kaio Desouza, who is a principal and data analyst for Allura Partners. Kaio specializes his time for Allura Partners in the recruitment process, from connecting the right people to the right companies for the right role. I had a very insightful discussion with him as we talked about all the disruptions in roles becoming obsolete, AI being repurposed in terms of, specialized AI roles, and what that might mean for engineers, software engineers, and anyone working in that IT space. I won't take away too much of the spoilers, but I know you're going to want to listen until the very end because there are so many key takeaways with regards to all these changes in the tech landscape and what that means for us as people. That's the key. Enjoy the episode. I want to learn a bit about you, so I thought it'd be fun to start out by reading the first paragraph of your LinkedIn.
Okay,
so, so Kaio Desouza, I specialize in data and analytics recruitment with a core focus on data engineering, data architecture, data analytics, and data governance. It's a lot of data. How do you manage with all that data?
Well, it's obviously a broad term. I'm not sure when I wrote that, I think I was trying to make sure I come up in every search possible on LinkedIn, to be honest. But it's a broad term, and I kind of work end to end within that space. So data is probably a little bit more focused on, I guess, the engineering side, with the architecture, the engineering kind of going hand in hand. And then analytics would be more your data analysis, business intelligence, that side of things. Data science somewhere kind of in the middle. But yeah, pretty much it's a broad term, many different skill sets, but essentially all trying to achieve the same thing, really. How you manage your data, what you do with it, really. That's what it is all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, nice. And I love that you've said that, maybe I created that with a way to sort of pop up on search engines and whatnot, right? So that's like kind of like a key use case in itself, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you practice what you preach.
Yeah, I mean, try to. I think, for better or for worse, especially with AI coming in and picking up words and profiles, I think it's important. But it's a broad term. That's just the tip of the iceberg, I guess. There's so many different job titles and companies have different structures, but I like to think those are probably the main areas, really.
Yeah, man. Look, I mean, and in light of that, I guess it's one of the key things I wanted to chat with you about today is I want to understand a little bit about, I guess, the industry you're in and the role that you play in that industry, and then I guess how data and analytics and then AI, of course, come into that. I've seen some of your other content, and I know that you're quite an advocate for AI in this, revolutionary phase that we're in. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Allura Partners, what they do and what your involvement is with them?
Yeah, no, perfect. Thanks for that. So, I'm a principal consultant at Allura Partners. I've been in Australia for 3 years now, as you can probably tell by my accent. Relocated from the UK. I'm sure most of your listeners have been called by a British recruiter at some point.
As a bit of an insight, Celentive has about 70% British employees. Yeah, so there you go.
There you go. So I've been recruiting for 10 years now and got sick of the rain and cold in London, decided to move to Australia. I've been with Allura Partners for the last 3 years. So Allura, we are an executive search and recruitment business, essentially focusing on leadership roles and team build-outs across private equity and ASX-listed companies. So our key offerings are across exec search, technology, transformation, and finance. Essentially, our business model and our goal is to place high-performance leaders and then empower them to build the team they need to essentially achieve their goals or their company goals. I sit within that wider technology sector, but like you mentioned, focusing on data and analytics, and then AI has come more into that over the last couple of years from that data side of things. So I don't necessarily recruit across AI software engineers or AI researchers. It's more the data side of AI and analytics.
Right. Okay. So you, in a nutshell, I guess, you guys basically pair up people with organizations and companies to make sure that the talent matches the, business need and whatnot. And it's very much, driven by data and analytics to make sure that you are pairing them up with the right companies with achieving the right outcomes.
Yeah, essentially we're like, matchmakers basically. So the companies will come to us and outline their goals, what they need for the hire. Sometimes it's, a one-off position to replace someone or due to growth. But then sometimes it's for larger programs of work that you need to build a team. And that's really where we excel as a business, is having that top-down approach, placing from, the leadership manager level, and then, building a team around them to deliver that program or that project, whatever it may be.
Yeah, nice. So you've been in with Allura for about 3 years. Have you been in recruitment and consulting in that space for that long, or?
So it's just come up to 10 years, which is a bit scary to say out loud. Makes me feel old, but I've been doing it for 10 years and always in that space. So I started off with kind of Python, machine learning engineers and data engineers, and then started to branch out from there. But 10 years experience in that space.
Yeah, nice. And so in that space, where do you see it moving with all this new AI stuff coming in? Like, I'm sure it's changing at a rapid rate, like every other industry right now. What's happening at the moment in your space?
Well, it's interesting because the term AI has been around for a long time. And I think when people speak about AI, they mean GenAI, which is obviously more the trend now, and it's gone into kind of the mainstream. But because I've been recruiting data scientists, for example, for 10 years, I've always come across that term AI, machine learning. I think traditional AI has been around for a long time, decades. So I've been hearing that term for a long time. And when I used to place the data scientists, we would speak about AI models and machine learning and natural language processing and things like that. So it's not a new term for myself, but what I've seen now is that term or that that type of software go into other areas of the business. So no longer is it in the data team in a cupboard somewhere, doing reports and dashboards. It's now finance want to know how they could use it, or marketing and other areas of the business. So it's just been that shift from something that engineers do, and it's almost like a geeky thing, to widely accepted and used by everyone. I think even my mum uses ChatGPT now, so everyone is trying to jump on that. And I think that's the main switch from something that was in the distance and, this thing that people do to, widely accepted, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's been a big shift with the ability to use AI, right? So when you mention Gen AI, it's like, well, now everyone, including your mother, can just log on and start talking to AI and probably write code, right? If your mum really wanted to, right?
I hope not.
It'd be a concerning thought. But I guess so that's been one of the biggest changes you've seen. And I guess like in the recruitment space, and I guess, data engineers and all that sort of, recruitment, what's changed in that space? Because we've had an interesting discussion on the last episode with our head of engineering, Felix, talking about how there's less of a need for juniors in that space. But I'm kind of curious to know on your end what's going on there.
No, it is interesting, and I think just to go back to that previous point, I think data as a whole went through a similar journey that AI is going through now. So, for example, if you think of a supermarket or a retail company, so traditionally back in the day, they would have a store, customers go in, buy stuff, and then that's the end of the kind of transaction. And then they realized that if they could capture that customer data, they can, improve profitability, become more efficient. So they started to make, reward apps and things like that to capture shopping habits, trends, and then ultimately sell that back, right? So then other companies started to see, how can we monetize our data, and how can we bring that in-house, and how can we have an analytics practice? The same thing is happening with AI. Certain companies pioneered that and were using it effectively, and then other companies thought, hang on, how can we use this for our business, either internally or, in a customer-facing capability. So I think that's what's happening in the market overall, is everyone's trying to see how they can use it for themselves. But the problem is not every company is at the right maturity level or have everything in place to to maximize it. Because if the data is not clean, it's not pulling from the right sources, it's not organized, then the AI is not going to produce what you want. And in terms of the trends, to go back to the junior point, I agree. Funny enough, I think what's changing more is actually a higher demand for the softer skills as opposed to necessarily the technical skills. So if you take business intelligence or data analytics, right? In the past, you'd analyze all this data. It would take a long time to just make basic reports or dashboards, whereas now AI can help generate those reports very fast and do more advanced analytics. So what we actually need is an analyst with good communication and people skills to translate that back to the business, right? So where a data analyst role maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, which is the main requirement will be the technical skills. Can you use Power BI? Can you use this? Can you use that? Now it's actually everyone should have that, but can you present to an executive? Can you manage a stakeholder? Can you communicate? And that's actually the most important thing now. I think the technical side is almost taken as a given. If you're applying for a job in that space, you should be able to write SQL, no Python, and Power BI, for example. But yeah, it's the other stuff. So it's a bit of an interesting switch.
There's a lot that I want to pick apart with that.
Yeah.
There's three little strings there I want to pick out. I think the first one I'll pick out is Celentive, for example. We over the years have shifted from having less software engineers, and because we're realizing that there's kind of no need to be creating custom things these days and whatnot. And so now if everything's shifting to more of this Gen AI stuff and using, you mentioned that some of those skills are like, basic skills. You should know how to use all these things. And then you've got AI to be able to enhance that. So the key value add is the people skills, right? The soft skills. So we have shifted more towards having consultants and working as a consultancy, right? Rather than the creation and coding and all that sort of stuff. So on that topic, in the recruitment space, are you finding that you need to upskill people, or like, what does that mean for you?
Well, in terms of, from a recruitment perspective, it's like a deeper conversation now with a client in terms of the person they need as opposed to the skill sets. I think in the past, a brief would be, I need someone with, 5 years with this technology, 5 years of this, worked in this type of company, whereas now that still comes, but it's almost like the start of the conversation. Then it's all about the person, what they need to do, what type of critical thinking or background, and that sort of thing. So specs and requirements have changed a little bit. And then the challenge for me is that it's hard to quantify that by looking at a CV, right? So if I'm recruiting and I put the skill sets out there, I could get 20, 30 similar looking CVs that have the skill set. But then now it's more of a qualification process from my side to try and judge on a phone call or a meeting this candidate's emotional intelligence, communication. So that part is harder in a sense. But the flip side is that once you get a network and you kind of get referrals and you start to know what kind of companies recruit those types of people, then you can be a bit more targeted maybe in your search. But it's definitely harder to just look at a CV now and say this person is perfect for the job. Whereas in the past, you could literally match the experience. If there was a new tool, you'd be confident that the client will be interested just because they're just going to be doing 100% tech work.
And I think what I love about this, and this is me putting my psychology hat on with my background in that, is that AI, there was a fear that AI would kind of make us less connected, and technology makes us less connected to each other. But what I'm hearing from you and thinking about now is that, well, actually it's bringing us more together in terms of connection, in terms of people skills, because that's going to be a requirement. Like, to get a job, you're going to need to have some good soft skills and people skills. Right, so you can't just sit there in your basement coding and then get your paycheck and be okay, right? Like, you've got to be able to, communicate. And it reminds me of something I learned when I was learning about communication, which was basically, if you're at a 10 out of 10 in what you do in your domain, but you're only a 3 out of 10 in communication and people skills, you're a 3 out of 10 in your domain. You're not a 10 out of 10 anymore. So it sounds like that's kind of a highlight on your in your end when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah, no, 100%, I agree. And I think there's little things that I see out there in the market that kind of validate that thought process. I think more and more companies that I'm working with at the moment, they're trying to get people back into the office. I think as a whole, obviously there are exceptions, but whereas maybe a couple of years ago, everyone was looking for fully remote roles or one day in the office, I think both candidates and clients are changing. So I actually have candidates way more open now to go into the office. They do want to be more involved and have that face-to-face time. And I think companies are trying to do that as well. Because like I said, if you're not just coding away in the cupboard anymore, you are embedded sometimes in other teams. So you could be a data engineer or an analyst, for example, but embedded into the finance team or the product team, whatever it may be. And having that interaction is important to your role now. It's a lot easier to meet and influence someone face-to-face and get buy-in and manage a project sometimes than it is to just do it fully remote. So I am seeing that switch. And I do think the soft skills, if there is a good thing to come from the AI revolution from a tech perspective, if it does bring people more together in that sense and improve the soft skills, I think that's important because that's the one thing that AI can't do, in my opinion, really.
Yeah, it struggles with that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to struggle with that for a long time, I think.
Exactly. So until they make robots and they literally replace us, I think, we need to be working on our soft skills. And that's the point. That's how I see AI. Is for example, is to help. We control the input and the output. It just helps in that middle part. If I was to pitch for a new business idea, I can get AI to write me the business plan, right, pretty quickly with my inputs and so on. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to go present that business plan, and I'm going to be the one to win the investment or not. I can't just go and just show them the business plan on the PowerPoint and say, give them money. At the end of the day, you still need that human, part of it to present, to convince, to influence.
Yeah, and that's deeply ingrained with building trust with someone and empathy and having that emotional intelligence like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I can totally understand that, and I think a lot of more people are becoming aware of that as time goes on. And I guess the other side of this, which is related, but the next string that I wanted to pull was more around. You mentioned clean data and how that's important with AI and all this sort of stuff. And, obviously if we're talking to data, it's got to be clean. Otherwise it's going to mislead you and whatnot. And then, I guess there's a saying there, which is data is the fuel to AI, right? Something like that. So in your experience, how do you understand that from your role and your development over the years? You've got AI talks to data when you talk to it, and then it input, output, like you mentioned. The key there is data, which is what I heard from you earlier. So I want to expand on that.
Yeah. So, I think it's just, if you think about different steps to becoming, let's say, an AI-driven company, right? You have to have the foundation, and data is that foundation. And it does vary a lot between companies and industries and sizes, and some companies have really good setups where they have a one source of truth or one data warehouse and everything's in the cloud and organized. But you'd be surprised how many companies or household names still have Excel and data entry and records that are old or outdated and incorrect. So it's just steps. You can't just say, oh, AI is cool, what are we doing with AI? And just start using it. Of course, you can use it internally for little things like ChatGPT and stuff like that. But as a whole, if you want to get to a point where you have an advanced analytics practice or you're using it to its maximum capability, you have to have that first part. And it's not just organization, it's governance. Companies in the finance sector, for example, highly regulated. You have to be careful with what you expose AI to, and that opens up a whole nother conversation of AI governance and that kind of thing. I think there'll be future roles in that space and new job titles that we don't know about yet because of that. You can't just, a bank can't just be putting everyone's bank details into AI and asking them to generate models without knowing that it's governed properly. So, I think it's just stepping stones, and I think certain companies are taking their time with it, and rightly so. I think other companies are further along the journey just because they were data driven to start with. And I think looking at the type of businesses, if you look at companies that are scale-ups or startups and more tech-focused, they're going to be further on in that journey just because of the type of company they are, where some of the traditional larger businesses that have been around for 50, 60, 70 years, as a whole, it will be a long road before they can be AI-driven because there's so many different data points, departments, some things are still on-prem and all of this. So yeah, it's just building blocks, I guess, but it's the foundation for it to work.
Yeah, and I think that's a very similar message that we are having, to portray to our clients and our communities, because it's sort of an education piece around it too, right? And there's lots of low-hanging fruit and easy wins, mostly for us, given we're a Microsoft partner, it's, Microsoft Copilot for productivity, right? Like that's kind of your easiest win you'll get, right? Yeah. So but again, you've got to make sure that your systems are all set up so that the governance of your data is, secure and people have right access to the right stuff, right? So then when you start using something within your suite, like Copilot, and you ask it something, it's going to go out to your ecosystem and come back with the answers, right? Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're not accessing the wrong stuff. We are seeing that we have to educate people. In your mind, like what's the key thing that you are finding that you have to educate, your community on with this?
So I think again, there's always two perspectives. There's the client side and the candidate side. From the client side, I think it's just advising them and giving them insights into what has worked well for other companies, almost like case studies. But I think more importantly, what hasn't worked well, because I think you learn more from the bad examples, I guess, where companies have maybe tried to do, not just in AI, but I think in transformation technology as a whole, where they've pumped millions to do a migration project, and then after 3 years it's kind of tanked, and then they've wasted so much money. So those kinds of case studies to just help them make sure that they have everything in place, and then advising them on insights related to skill sets and salaries and that kind of stuff. So if a client's saying to me, I need 4 people, these skill sets and this budget, just little things like advising them if that skill set is achievable, get flexibility where I can, maybe suggest alternatives, educate them on the budget, help them out with that, those little things. But at the end of the day, it's down to the senior leadership of that business to kind of sign off on things.
Right.
I'm more as a sounding board and advice specifically related to the roles, right? But I think it is helpful. I think people think of recruitment or recruiters as, we find CVs, so they engage us at that point, but it's not true. We help right from the idea all the way up to when a role's gone live. So, for example, if a client is thinking about hiring someone in a month or 2, 3 months, we can have multiple chats and go through a spec together and make suggestions and help him with his business case or her business case into the company. Mm-hmm. It's not just finding people.
Right, so it's people don't come to you and say, hey, we just got rid of the, data engineer, we need another one. It's like, well, hang on, do you actually need another one? Like, what do you need to do, right? So do you guys have that kind of...
Well, yeah, I mean, you do get that situation, but it's, it's not this servant master relationship where they just call me, tell me what they need, and then I just go send some CVs. There's a lot more to it. In that example, if they said, we got rid of someone or someone left, we need a new data engineer, there'll be a series of questions and discussions around what that person will actually be doing, why it didn't work out. Maybe if it's right, suggest an alternative skill set or different profile. If a client tells me they need a junior or mid-level to do something, but it sounds like that's a role for a senior person or a lead or a completely different skill set, then that will be part of the conversation. So there's always a bit of a back and forth. It's not just find this, go for it,
So what do you do then I've noticed that a lot of sort of our clients are onboarding completely brand new roles, right? So they're like, an AI specialist within that role or an AI chief officer or something like that, like almost like a C-suite AI person.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that front?
Again, it's very situational and depending on what they need and how the company's set up. There was a recent placement I did for a large retailer. I placed I think the title was AI lead, but head of AI/AI lead. But that person was to go in and essentially be the first person in this new AI team to help drive AI adoption across the whole business. And it's a multi-billion-dollar business. So big role for one person, but that person was the first in hopefully a sequence to come. But what was required of that person was technical knowledge, but going back to the soft skills, the main thing was the communication, influencing, because you're going to be speaking to all these different business units to build the use cases, understand what they need, and then prioritize which one to go first, and then really push that and drive across the business. So that was an interesting role, and I think I've seen a lot more of those types of roles come up, job titles that we haven't heard before, and sometimes they do stick AI at the front of it, and then when you actually drill down, it is a product manager role, or it is a head of data role, or it is a lead data engineer role. So
why are they putting AI in there then? Is it like just a bit of a buzz thing, or is it a...
Well, to be honest, I do think that's part of it to attract people. The trend side of it. I do think that is a part of it. Not that that's a bad thing. I think it's a competitive market. You're trying to attract the best people. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it's also maybe like a sign of intent of where you want to go. It's kind of starting off on the right foot.
So it's a positional statement for the company that we value and we're on the forefront of AI because we've hired an AI, specialist or whatever.
Yeah, we're going to take this serious. We're going to invest in this and build a team or whatever it may be, as opposed to, if you put your candidate hat on, if you're applying for a role and you're passionate about AI, you want to get more experience. If you just type in data engineer, there could be hundreds of jobs that maybe look quite similar. But if you search data and AI or AI engineer role or something, it's definitely going to stand out. So that's the client side. And then from the candidate side, it's again educating them on the type of roles out there. I do get people ask me, I really want to get an AI engineer role, but the truth is that AI part is always tied into something else. Unless you're like what Mark Zuckerberg is doing with that super intelligence team and just throwing money at people. They're AI full-time researchers. That's all they're doing, researching AI, writing models. Those roles are not common, No. Exactly. If you're a data engineer in Sydney and you want to work more with AI, there's not going to be that many AI-only roles. It's always a part of something else. So just educating them on that kind of thing. Yes, this role has AI. It's a small part of the role. It could be more. But it's, we're not there yet where a team will have, 10, 20 AI-only engineers. That's all they do. Not yet anyway. Unless you're an AI company and that's your product and,
but for the average company in all the different industry verticals, it's sort of like, well, okay, we're trying to run a business that has business objectives and outcomes that we're looking to provide value to the community, right? Like it's not just about innovating big. I think one of the key things that we tell people, especially in sort of the earlier stages of discovery, let's say, it's like just because there's AI available doesn't mean you should use it. And also there's another side conversation around automation is not AI, and maybe you just need automation, right? Yeah. So there's a bit of educating around that sort of piece. But I think the key thing is to not lose sight of the fact that, the AI product is just another tool on drugs to achieve a business outcome, right? So it's important to, really understand how your business works. So if you're on board like an AI engineer or data engineer that has AI in the title, you still need to understand what the business is doing, right? So maybe that's part of the soft skills, like knowing how, your customers work and knowing how the end-to-end process is with all your products to achieve what you're doing, right? Like, so how much of your job then is educating your candidates, and then how much of it is educating your clients? Is that the right terminology?
Yeah, that's the correct. Look, there's many sort of parts to the role, but the way we work and I work is I'm always sort of proactively out there in the market. So a lot of the time, by the time a client tells me that they need a certain person with a certain skill set, 9 times out of 10, I've already spoken to that person that week or that month or 2 months ago, whatever it may be, and it's a case of then, seeing if they'll be interested in that, and that's kind of proactive recruitment, right? As opposed to here's a job, go find people, and then start again. That's the beauty of just recruiting in one space. I know it's a broad space, data analytics, but if you're always networking, always speaking to people, you learn to, understand what people want, what they would move jobs for, and that kind of thing. So it's a bit of it's a mix. I'm always speaking to people, always networking, and then within that, my job is to help that person find the right job and help that company hire the right person. And it's not a perfect science.
It's very tricky.
It's because if I called someone up and said, tell me 10 things you want from your next job, and I waited to find a job that had all 10, I'd never place anyone because it doesn't work like that. It's not a perfect world. So I'll probably say, understanding people, what's actually important, educating them, influencing them is a big part of the job, both for the candidate and the client, because the client, they're the same. If they were to tell me 10 things that they need in this hire, and they waited to find that person that had all 10 points, they'll be looking for forever. Right? So it's just understanding, okay, you want these 10 things, what are the top 3, what are the non-negotiables? Okay. And with tech, it's very, it is transferable, certain skill sets. So if they're using Power BI, but I've got a really good candidate that is more Tableau, it doesn't mean they can't go for that job. So it's just understanding what are the skills that are 100% non-negotiable they need to have, what's flexible, and then what kind of person, the soft skill side of things, and then obviously trying to match that.
Yeah. It's very, very tricky. And I think what I've learned so far just from having this conversation with you is that I guess I came with a bit of a presumption that you were more of a techie, right? But really your job is very, very people facing, and perhaps that's the evolution of your role over the years, right? With all these things. So that kind of validates our points that we've made. And I guess I'm curious to know imagine 2 different people and you can give them advice. One is people looking for a job, and one is people recruiting for a job. So keeping in mind all these things we've talked about. Imagine you're talking to a candidate and someone looking for a job. What advice would you give them in this day and age?
Yeah, so I think for candidates first, I think the way the Australian market has been, I guess, especially in the last 12 months, it has been quite difficult, quite competitive. I think there's, quite a high volume of candidates per job out there. In the past, let's say I would get, let's throw a number out. Let's say I would get 50 applicants for a job maybe 2 years ago for the same job, same salary, everything. I'm probably getting 150. So it is quite flooded, so to speak. So my advice to candidates would be, to try and differentiate yourself, right? But also you have to go the extra mile if you can and be a bit more targeted. So yes, you can just apply for some adverts and wait for people to call you back, but that's not really working at the moment. So reach out to me. That's the number one.
That should be the first one, Kaio.
Let me help you. But in terms of your own search, you have to try and differentiate yourself. A lot of CVs look similar, especially in that kind of mid to senior market. A lot of similar experience, similar companies. So try and do something else to make you stand out. So that could be, some LinkedIn work and maybe messaging a hiring manager directly and trying to get a conversation to happen.
So these are activities that they can do, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I'm kind of curious a bit more about what about their CV? Like, what should be the header of their CV that's going to differentiate them, as you mentioned?
Yeah. So that's the first part. The second part is in terms of the the CV and their profile. I think being generic doesn't work anymore. To go back to the first thing you said about my LinkedIn profile, and the reason I put all the different keywords was to get found, and I think that used to work for a long time. If you're a data engineer, you just put all the hot keywords in there and you get picked up. But generic and long CVs, they don't work anymore. I would say less is more, and try and tailor it to the role, and not just the skill set, but on the softer skills. I know I keep going back to that, but that is what makes the difference. So, for example, on your CV, if you say, company X, I was a data engineer, worked with a Snowflake data warehouse, Power BI for dashboarding. Like, that's going to be on every CV that apply for that role. What companies are more interested in now is, okay, but what part of that did you do? So, for example, did you set up the warehouse from scratch? Did you migrate something to Power BI? What was the actual project? And then what were the outcomes? So, through this project, we saved the business X amount of dollars, or we improved efficiency, or whatever it may be. And then your role in that. So, weekly meetings with executives, presented to the board, that side of things as well.
So the key examples should really be kind of at the top, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just a list of your skills. It should be like, these are key examples where I provided value to the business. I was able to execute my soft skills and people skills whilst also doing the technical stuff. And here's examples, and link them all together.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the candidate. What if you're looking to hire someone new in this day and age?
Yeah, again, it's probably...
Other than come to you first, of course.
Yeah, I mean, number one, come to me. But outside of that, I think it's, again, very dependent on the skill set. But it's understanding that the flip side of that is, with the tech tools and products, they can be interchangeable, and you can learn and pick things up. And I think companies that hire good people, in my experience, and have high-performing teams, they are flexible. I've had clients in the past, especially going back in, to the London days, where they would say, I need someone with 8 years experience, and then they would reject a CV because the person had 7 years. And I'm thinking, realistically, what is the difference between 7 and 8 years? And are you saying that someone with 5 years is no good, but someone with 10 years is good? So flexibility, I think, when hiring is important. Like I said, you're going to have your non-negotiables related to the project, but I think everything else comes into play. And looking for candidates that are driven, they're smart, they have the soft skills as well. And if they have that desire to learn, just because they've been with one tool for a longer period of time, doesn't mean that they can't learn the other. There's obviously always going to be exceptions related to the actual role and the seniority and what they're doing. But I think not having too much of a closed mind at the start. I've had companies, just because you're fintech or finance related company doesn't mean you have to hire from finance. That's another thing that I've had in the past, where they are a retail company, and then I send a CV that maybe comes from the banking world or from a random industry, and it gets rejected without meeting that person because of the industry. Now, I know you can't interview every candidate, but I guess I'm just trying to say to understand what your non-negotiables are, and then be a bit open-minded to certain things related to specific technologies. And I think at the end of the day, the personality and the desire to learn and grow goes a long way, I think, to kind of bridge any technical gap.
Yeah. So I guess there's a baseline, I guess, for both the candidate and the client, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a baseline of like, well, sure, figure out what your non-negotiables are, or if you're the candidate, figure out what your absolute key skills are. But, also be flexible and be able to present yourself and be open-minded, as you say.
Yeah.
Because, maybe there's a lot of benefit to being open-minded as well, right? Because if people are transferring from perhaps one industry to another, or perhaps a slight shift in a job title role, maybe there's some key value adds there to transfer skills into different spaces to grow and innovate, right?
Yeah. And just to be clear, this is on the basis that they have the technical ability. So
sure, yeah.
I'm not
That's
saying, I'm not, exactly.
Right, yeah.
I'm not saying, just hire anyone because they're keen. This is assuming they have the technical ability. Most technical roles will have a technical exam or test or presentation. So this is all assuming they have the ability to pass that. This is more on the initial screening, reviewing a CV, thinking about the kind of person. And something that's come up actually is the topic of sort of diversity, which is, doesn't necessarily just mean gender, but it means diversity within a team and different type of people. Something I've come across in the past is a hiring manager, let's say they have 5 people in their team and all 5 graduated from the same university. So suddenly he thinks that I only want to hire people from that university. This is what I need. So it's just being open-minded in that sense. So yeah, diversity in all senses of gender, background, race, whatever it may be. It doesn't mean just because you have certain things that have worked in your team that's going to carry on forever. You could be missing out on someone from another university in that example who is great. Yeah, so
be open-minded.
Be open-minded. Yeah,
there's a lot of benefits there. I can definitely see that. So that's a key message right there. Look, I'd love to keep chatting more with you, but I'm conscious of time. So perhaps to wrap up our conversation today, maybe I'd be curious to know, like, what are you most excited by with all this hype around AI and all this innovation?
Well, I think personally, I use ChatGPT and I love it. I love the different AI tools that we have available to us. It's just made so many tasks easier related to admin and things like that. So from a personal perspective, I'm excited to see, what kind of tools and products come out in the future that can help me in my job. Both in my job and personal life, and just see where that goes. But I think from a recruitment perspective, I think it's exciting because there's a whole new world out there of job titles and roles that we don't even know about yet. The classic thing people say about AI is, it's going to replace people or replace jobs, and that's true, but only to an extent. If you think about factories, when everything became, autonomous, it doesn't mean that obviously those factory workers, weren't necessarily needed in that capacity, but it created a whole new workforce, people to program the machines, to maintain it, to come up with new machines, and whole new types of jobs. So I think that's the part that excites me. It's what am I going to be recruiting for in the future? What kind of roles? How companies going to be using it? And I think that's exciting. I'm personally all aboard.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting because, I guess, a lot of people are curious around that. Like, I think I mentioned that at the start of our conversation, right? That people had a fear around, AI taking all these jobs, but really at the end of the day, it's just another revolutionary period we're going through where jobs and responsibilities are being repurposed. And it sounds like you're on the front line of that, and you're, in some sense, influencing that, right? Of which direction these repurposed roles go into.
Yeah, I like to think so. At the end of the day, I'm the man in the middle, so to speak, and
my job is you're on the front line.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to learn and educate myself and buy into it, and I think that's important because the more you understand it and you can apply it to your own life, I think the better service I can provide, and just have better conversations, I guess, with the people who are out there, doing it.
Better connections.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm excited. It could be wrong, and Skynet could happen, and it's all over. But I think,
and that's where we end this conversation. We'll turn that off.
But I'm excited.
Cool, man. Well, look, thanks very much for being on the episode. It's been great chatting with you. I'll have to get you on here in maybe a couple of months when there's new job titles that have come up that you can share with us as a episode number 2 with you. So awesome. Thanks very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. And we can do this again for sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kaio.
Awesome. Thank you.